Cat 1. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Jameson, Angel Blue, CK.
Hello there and welcome along to the first episode of the Sports and Recreation podcast. In this episode we'll be looking back at the big talking points on the weekend, as well as rounding up all the action from last week at the USW Sport Park. We'll also be delving into the back pages, looking back on the Cardiff Half Marathon and letting you know what sport is on in and around Cardiff. So considering this is the first episode, we're going to begin by introducing ourselves. I'll begin with myself. My name's Tom. I'm 20 years old and I'm a second year sports journalism student at the University of South Wales in Cardiff. I've supported Liverpool since I was 7 years old and have had a Scarlet season ticket since 2008. When I'm not in university, I play cricket for my local side, Nayland.
I'm Dan, I'm 19 years old and I'm also a sports journalism student at the University of South Wales. I'm a Cardiff season ticket holder and a long-term supporter of Cardiff City.
Hi, I'm Jamil. I'm 20, also on the course, the BA Sports Journalism course. Like Tom, a Liverpool fan. Outside of university, I enjoy playing football, following boxing and mixed martial arts as well.
So I think the best place to start is with the major event that took place in Cardiff over the weekend. That was the Cardiff Half Marathon. Me and Dan went to it yesterday. The runners started at Cardiff Castle and followed a route which had notable sites including the Cardiff City Stadium, Penarth Marina, Wales Millennium Centre and Roath Park Lake. Dan and I were out and about before and after the race to get the thoughts of the various runners involved. The first person we spoke to was Richie, and here's what he had to say. Okay, so what's your name?
It's Richie, man.
Have you run in the Cardiff Half Marathon before?
Yeah, the last couple of years.
What's your personal best?
My personal best in the half marathon is 1:27, which is in Bristol 2 weeks ago. But on Cardiff, I think it's something crazy like 1:50.
Oh wow. Are you looking to beat that again today? Or?
Yeah, I'm hoping to go in around 1:27.
Are you running for charity today or just for fitness?
No, just for the club, White Rock.
Okay, and where have you come from?
I live in Cardiff.
So you heard from Richie there, and he's part of a running club called White Rock. But however, not all runners were part of clubs. We caught up with Amanda, who was running for a cause close to her heart. Line here. How do you enjoy the half marathon today?
I really enjoyed it. It's the second time I've done it. The last time I did it was 7 years ago. I was running for Alzheimer's Society today because my mum has Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
The support was amazing. It was really great running for a charity. Running for any charity is worthwhile. Amazing atmosphere.
Yeah.
Perfect weather.
How much preparation do you have to put in to
I wouldn't say I was a runner. I like the gym myself, but
yeah.
I make an effort for this. I've been doing like long runs by myself. I joined a free running club, Moti on Albany Road, which has been really great, really helped and supportive, and it's like my social group as well.
Yeah.
All abilities. So I put the effort in, plus doing stuff in the gym. I think it all helps.
Do you run any other half marathons or just Cardiff?
Just Cardiff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will you be doing it again next year?
Yeah, hopefully for charity. Yeah, I'm inspired by it was great. The support is, it's such a nice atmosphere.
Yeah.
The music, people cheering, following the tweets and things beforehand.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's great. Look at it. It's like,
So well done to Amanda there. She sounded like she enjoyed that a lot. Another of the runners that is part of a club is Joe, and we got his thoughts on the race not long after he crossed the finish line. So we're just joining the finish line now, the Cardiff Half Marathon. I'm joined with Joe. How did you find the half marathon today?
Very good.
Was it quite tough?
No, nice flat course, lots of spectators en route handing out jelly doos and stuff, very good.
Are you a regular at these kind of events? Or?
I've done a few, not many though.
How much preparation does it take for something like this?
3 to 6 months.
Yeah. Do you run for a charity today or just for a running club?
Just for a running cause.
Okay, cool. So that was Joe, and he was someone who was taking a more competitive side to the half marathon. Another person we spoke to was Reese, and he was running for a cancer charity after losing someone close to him.
I'm with Reese at the Cardiff Half Marathon finish line. Reese, how did you find the marathon today?
Pretty tough. The atmosphere was amazing and the weather was perfect for it. The route's really nice and flat, but it's just tough. But it was good.
How much training did you put in for today?
Quite a bit. Me and my friend have done a few 10Ks in the past couple of months. So I've been running, pretty regularly. So felt pretty good coming into it, but there's only so much you can do, I think.
Have you done any events like this before?
I've done a half marathon, not the Cardiff one. I've done the Plymouth half marathon. That was a bit more hilly, so this was nice and flat. But yeah, it was a great race. Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about the charity you're running for today?
Oh, Macmillan. We're doing it in aid of my friend's sister who passed away of breast cancer earlier this year. We raised about £1,000, so amazing stuff, really.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time.
That's okay.
So well done to Matthew there. That was a fantastic cause that he's running for. And now, as I mentioned earlier, some of the runners take part for enjoyment, while others had a competitive mindset, like Joe, looking to record personal bests. Matthew was one of those, and here is his reaction.
Matthew, how did you find the race today?
Really good. Yeah, massive PB, perfect weather, good crowds, couldn't fault it really.
And how much preparation did you put in for today's half marathon?
I do a lot of keep fit anyway, but yeah, good solid 12-week block of running training. Probably missed about 1 week of that, but yeah.
And have you done any events like this before?
Yeah, quite a few half marathons. I've done Cardiff many years ago, but probably not for about 5 years, so I'm kind of getting back into it now.
And are you running for any charities today?
Yeah, Noah's Ark Children's Hospital today.
Great cause, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
So those are the people that we caught up with. It was a fantastic day, really enjoyed it, and once I got back to my house I was able to make a review of what I thought of the day. So I've just got back from what was a fantastic few hours at this year's Cardiff Half Marathon. I'll just start off by saying a big congratulations to Australia's Jack Rayner. The 22-year-old won the Cardiff Half Marathon men's event and the inaugural Commonwealth Half Marathon Championships. He finished in a time of 1 hour and 59 seconds, which was a new personal best. In the women's event, it was Uganda's Juliet Chepwell who came out on top. The 28-year-old finished with a time of 1 hour, 9 minutes and 45 seconds. And finally, in the men's wheelchair race, it was South African Tiaan Bosch who finished in a time of 55 minutes and 22 seconds to win. So this was the first time that I've been involved in the event, and I've got to say firstly just how fantastic it was to see so many people turning out and putting in the effort for the causes that are so close to their heart. I think the general consensus seemed to be that it was a good course for running, and everyone was relieved that the weather was kind to them. The sun shone all afternoon, so there's no complaints there. People who are more regular runners, and then there was those who are more novices at this distance. I think the common thing was the enjoyment on the faces, and this is something which really reminds you just why people take part in events like this. So finally, I think a really good day out, really enjoyed it, and I'm already looking forward to taking part again next year. So that was my summary, and we heard in the various audio clips there the different charities that people were running in aid of. There's certainly been an increase in recent years in the number of participants that are running for a good cause. According to the official Cardiff Half Marathon website, at least 23% of the 25,000 entrants ran for a good cause in 2017. I think this is an important reminder that this event is a good exercise in terms of fitness, but also in raising money for those who need it most. So, Dan, you joined me at the half marathon yesterday. What were your overall thoughts on the day?
I think it was such an enjoyable event. Loads of people seemed to have smiles on their faces, and there were so many charities, including Macmillan, as we heard, Alzheimer's, Noah's Ark. It was just great to see so many people come together for good causes. Of course, there were people from running clubs as well, but it was just such an enjoyable event. I think brought the city of Cardiff together. Yes, it was fun to be there.
Now, unfortunately, there was a bit of sad news towards the end of the day. The organisers of the event, Run for Wales, released a statement late last night confirming that 2 people had died after crossing the finish line. These are the first tragedies that have occurred in the event's history. This is obviously very saddening news to hear, and we'd like to send out our condolences to both sets of families. So we'll move on now to another big talking point from the weekend. Was yesterday's Premier League game between Liverpool and Manchester City at Anfield. The game failed to deliver to expectations of finishing in a 0-0 draw, with Riyad Mahrez missing a late penalty to win the game for the away side. So lads, what do you think we learnt from that game yesterday, if anything?
Well, no one expected such a game devoid of any attacking quality, really. Man City, Liverpool, they're the two favourites for the title. Going into the game, everyone was thinking it's going to be a high-scoring game, an entertaining game, but it turned out to be anything but. It was devoid of any quality, really, going forward. It was mainly a defensive game, which both sides defended well, bar the Van Dijk mistake for the penalty. But I think both sides were afraid to lose. So after maybe 60 minutes of the game and it's still goalless, both sides really if you're not going to win the game, they don't want to lose the game. So I think that's why you saw such a surprising game, really, in a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Dan, do you think that Liverpool will still be hopeful that they can mount the title challenge after yesterday's performance?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they've still got a quality side, and they didn't lose the game. It's important to remember that although they didn't win, they didn't lose either. But I think in the future games against big teams, Man City away at the Etihad, against the likes of Chelsea, I think they are going to have to go out more attacking. I think the likes of Salah and Mane are going to have to hit form in those games, because those are the games that win you the title. Those are the important games. I mean, people were saying already that the winner of that game would be favourites for the title, so already we're seeing just how important these big games really are.
And if you had to pick a winner out of the two at this stage, who do you think you would go for based on what you've seen?
Well, I'm a Liverpool fan, but I'm going to have to say City are still the favourites for the title. They've got by far the best squad in the league, best team in the league, probably the best manager in the league. But Liverpool, I think, are the definite second in line. And if they can, like Dan says, if Mane and Salah can hit that form that they hit last year, then Liverpool are in with a big chance, because they've made some good signings with Alisson and Van Dijk coming in. So we'll have to wait and see.
Do you think that consistency will be something that could let Liverpool down possibly? We know how consistent Manchester City are away from home and home as well. Liverpool have been known to slip up against smaller teams. Obviously they've improved a bit this year, but do you think that could be something that lets them down over the course of a season?
Possibly. I mean, we haven't seen any signs of that happening so far. I mean, they even though they played, say, badly against Leicester, they still came away with all 3 points. Now, Alex Ferguson and Manchester United made a habit of playing badly but still winning the league. So it's still possible that might just be the case with Liverpool this season. They may finish top despite not playing well against smaller teams, but still coming away with a victory. I do think, though, eventually that may occur, maybe against likes of Crystal Palace or even the newly promoted teams, or Brighton, for example. I think they may drop a few points there. I think time will tell, though, because they've definitely in the strongest position they've been for years now.
And obviously their squad depth has improved with numerous signings over the summer, but it's still probably not on a par with Man City. Do you think realistically that City's strength in squad overall could be what delivers them the title?
I think so, yeah. Like I say, their squad's so good. Like you say, they got De Bruyne out injured. They got Bernardo Silva in there. They got David Silva in there. So basically, no amount of injuries will ever really dent them, really. So I think their squad's so strong that it's going to be hard for anyone to really go surpass them. So yeah, I'd have to agree with you and say, yeah, simply City are strong, yeah, too strong.
And how hard do you think it will be with because obviously both sides will be focusing on the Champions League as well. Liverpool got to the final last year. Do you think too much focus on the Champions League could maybe affect their chances in the Premier League?
I'd say so, yeah. Liverpool went away to Napoli and lost on Wednesday, and then put in a tired performance yesterday. So you'd have to say those tough Champions League games can catch up on you. It's all about how you use your squad again, and Liverpool haven't got as good a squad as Man City. So I'd say City are the favourites for the title, and rightly so.
So obviously we talk about these professional teams and how you know how physically fit they'd have to be, but another thing which they have to be fit in is their mental fitness as well. And an event which is coming up on Wednesday, the 10th of October, is World Mental Health Day. Now, the Mental Health Foundation website describes the day as an opportunity for all stakeholders working on mental health issues to talk about their work and what more needs to be done to make mental health care a reality for people worldwide. Now, we all know how important it is to be physically fit when competing in sport at any level, but just how important, Dan, do you think it is to be mentally fit, if you will?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see how form of players or athletes, how strongly mental health affects their form. Recently, we had so many athletes come out and talk about their mental health, and that can come across, what they say, on the track, on the field. It's very difficult for athletes to compete at their best when their mind isn't in the right place. So I think it's very important to address these issues, as Mental Health Day, hopefully on Wednesday, will do.
And Jamil, would you say mental health is beginning to be taken more seriously in professional sport, in particular with the resources they've got?
I'd say definitely so, yeah. You look 10 years ago, mental health wasn't even really discussed. It was more of a taboo subject, especially within sports, such as rugby and football. But nowadays, you've got specialists coming in to, look at mental health. If there's any problems, they're there to help those individuals. And there's also a bigger emphasis on ensuring that mental health is, above all, number one, as opposed to winning. I think mental health is becoming more and more important, really, within the sporting world and generally as well.
Yeah, and we've just spoken about with Liverpool and Manchester City the sort of talent they've got in the playing squad. But do you also think something that goes under the radar is the mental strength, and that could actually be the difference to a side that wins the title and a team that doesn't, rather than just the talent in the team?
Yeah, I think Guardiola, for example, has that winning mentality, and you see that passion come across through his team, the way they're structured, they're so composed. Don't get me wrong, Jurgen Klopp has a great mentality himself. You never see him be negative, and when he do, it turns it into a positive brilliantly for his team. But that mentality's got to be so strong for a title-winning team, and I do think both teams have that. So it is a case of who can stay mentally strong throughout the whole season consistently.
Do you think that stories which are being told by ex-sportsmen and women can have a positive impact on the younger generation moving forward?
I think so, definitely, yeah. Like I say, 10 years ago, going back further, mental health was sort of pushed away and no one really wanted to talk about it. But nowadays, ex-sportsmen and women, they definitely have a positive impact on their stories. Unfortunately, a lot of their stories are bad stories on their experiences within mental health, but those experiences will then help the youngsters coming through now to say if they're not okay, or to go and say to a specialist if they're not feeling the best mentally. So yeah, I'd have to say ex-sportsmen and women, yeah, they have a massive positive impact on the younger generation, and they should keep coming out. People should keep coming out because it's doing a lot of good.
Okay, thanks for that, guys. We look forward to World Mental Health Day on Wednesday. We'll move on now to university sport, and we're at the University of South Wales, which is based in Cardiff, but the USW sports teams compete at the Sport Park, which is based in Treforest, and last week saw the start of pre-season and regular season fixtures, and here's a quick roundup of how the teams fared. So we'll start off with the University of South Wales women's side. They had a convincing 7-0 win against Swansea University. They'll be hoping to bring the momentum from this win into their opening game of the season against Southampton Solent on Wednesday.
The lacrosse pre-season match saw the USW men's first lose 2-18 to Swansea University's men's first as well. And the lacrosse pre-season match between USW women's team also saw them lose to Swansea University women's 0-16.
So both looks like both lacrosse sides will be looking to improve a bit before the season starts. Another regular season game which started on Wednesday was the men's football. The first team, which is managed by Lee Kendall now, with Steve Savage at the helm. They travelled to face Cardiff Metropolitan University at King Coyd campus. The game finished 2-2 with Cardiff Met scoring late on to salvage a draw after USW had been reduced to 10 men, but also took the lead with a Joe Evans goal. Next week now they face Bournemouth men's first, and that is the opening game at USW Sport Park. We'll talk about the women's football as well. This is the first season that USW will field a women's team in the Bucks League. They play Cardiff University women's thirds next Wednesday, and that's also at the Sport Park. And we'll finish off with a bit of rugby. The first team got their Bucks South A campaign underway against Bath Seconds at Sardis Road on Thursday evening. Ben Daniel's side ran out 31-24 winners, so a good start for them, and they'll be looking to improve on last season's third place finish. So we'll stick with university sport for the time being, women's sport in particular, and we just spoke about the 7-0 win that the women's team had over Swansea University on Wednesday, and someone who scored 3 goals in that game was Lucy McDonough, and here's what she had to say after the game.
Lucy, a good result for you today. Good to get a hat-trick as well. What do you make of your team's all-round performance?
Considering we've only had 2 training sessions together and we've had a lot of new starters come into the team, I'm actually really impressed with how well we played together, made a hell of a lot of good passes and just kept morale up the whole team, whole game.
And how do you feel the results stand to you instead for the upcoming season?
It's definitely a positive. It's definitely left the girls on a high, ready to start next week against Southampton. I just hope we can keep up with it this season and finish better than we did last year.
And what are your expectations for the upcoming season?
I want to get a lot of good goals in, and a lot of the other girls to get a few in as well, and just to finish as high as we can.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Cheers.
So well done to Lucy there, good performance from her and a encouraging start. She mentioned there about her target was to score a lot more goals this season, and from what you two saw from her, do you think she'll be able to achieve this feat?
Definitely. I mean, I've never seen a striker with so much pace for the university teams than Lucy has. I mean, she was brilliant up top, but she ran the whole 90. just kept threatening and threatening, and she produced some quality touches on the ball. And I just think someone of that quality in USW Women's Firsts, the team they have, she definitely will get at least 20 to 30 goals this year. She was brilliant.
And the team came second in their first season back in the Bucks Western First Day in 2016-17, and last year they finished second in the Western 1A. They were 8 points behind eventual winners Exeter First. Do you think that Kaz's team will be able to mount a challenge for the top place this season?
I think definitely watching them on Wednesday at the Sport Park, they were electrifying. Swansea didn't know what to do in the barn in Treforest, which is a great facility as well. Going on to that, I think is a big help as well. Having such good facilities at the Treforest Sport Park will play a big part in the women's team this year. And Exeter last year, like you say, they pipped them just to the first place finish, but this year they've added a lot of new players. You've got Kaz, obviously the manager. He's a very good manager. He nurtures the players. He's not afraid to give anyone a chance, whoever you are. And as we saw, Lucy bagged herself a hat-trick, so I'm backing her to do well this season, and hopefully USW can finish well this year.
So you mentioned there about the facilities. Do you think that is the main secret behind USW women's success?
I wouldn't say it's a secret, but I say it helps a lot. Yeah, you've got top of the range facilities there. The Wales women team use it. The actual real women's team use that. And yeah.
So with you said about with the women's team there. Do you think? And there's a couple of players involved in that team, especially last season. A couple of them play for Wales. How much of a positive do you think university sport can be in giving young female players a chance?
I think it's a great opportunity for the young players. University football is still a high standard of football, as we saw on Wednesday and all of last season. It's a very high standard, and I think it can only be a good thing to get more games in your legs. So yeah, I'd agree. It's a very good thing.
Okay, so we'll stick with female sport for the time being, and we've been looking at one to watch a female athlete, and we've come up with one called Mackenzie Dern. She's a UFC fighter, and she's just getting her career underway, and it's really expected. A lot of people are backing her to go on to really big things, to maybe even compete with what Ronda Rousey achieved in the sport. So I'll hand over to Dan and just to give you a bit of info on Mackenzie.
Well, Mackenzie Dern, she's only 25 years old. She's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu expert, former world #1 in the IBJJF, and she did make the transition to mixed martial arts only in 2017, where she joined the Legacy Fighting Alliance, and she finished with a win-loss record of 4-0. So she's already shown how impressive she is in there. Bearing in mind, in her jiu-jitsu, she was a gold medal winner at the World Cup as well.
Do you think how much sort of like how big do you think she can go in the sport? Obviously, women tend to do quite well and can become quite big superstars, as Ronda Rousey did. Do you think she has the potential to go on to that sort of stature?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, she's only made her debut in March 2018 against Ashley Yoder at UFC 222. So I think she dominated her. She won by submission. She then won at UFC 224 as well, and again by submission early on. She has been criticised though for her lack of commitment to perhaps MMA training. She's been kicked out of the MMA lab. When asked about her training, she has a bit of an attitude to it. She sort of says, "Oh, it's okay, I'll come to it when I come to it." So I think people want her to be more committed to the MMA training, to her UFC training, because people are acknowledging the talent she has. I mean, she's 7-0 in MMA. I mean, that is superb. But in her last fight, she was 7 pounds over the 116 pound limit for the strawweight title. So it's a very, again, her commitment can be questioned. Like I said, she was overweight in that strawweight fight. So if she just becomes more committed, if she becomes more determined, she can definitely become one of the best women's fighters the UFC, I think, has seen in a long while.
How positive do you think it is where a female can do well in the sport which isn't so popular as, say, football, for example?
I think it's very important. I think it's brilliant, really, because you see the star that Ronda Rousey became as a result of her fighting, and she was on par with the likes of Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor in terms of star power. I mean, everyone knew who she was. I think it's important for women like that to build that reputation, because she helped build UFC into what it is today, and now she's gone on to other things, of course. I think now, so hopefully with her gone, there will be more women fighters coming through to increase the sport's popularity, to increase how well known it is around the world, And it's the same with any other sport. Like, for example, in women's football, the England's women's team now have probably been in a better position than they've ever been. In rugby, it's becoming ever more popular. Serena Williams in tennis is one of the greatest, not just female, but all-round tennis players of all time. So it is great to see all these female athletes bringing their sports up and increasing their popularity across the world.
Jamil, what sort of female fighters do you think that are most likely to stand in her way in a rise to the top, if you will?
Well, she's only just really started to make a name in the UFC. Obviously, you've got a lot of young UFC fighters, but there's a lot of, you could name Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Karolina Kovacic. Hard to say her name, I know. But like I say, like Dan says, it's a commitment that is the main thing. I wouldn't say any female fighter really stands in her way as such, because she's such a good fighter herself. She's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so which means I'd back her against basically any fighter in the UFC on that alone, because it's such a hard skill to master, especially get a black belt. But overall, I'd have to echo what Dan says. If she can get her weight down, get ahead in the game, get determination there, then I think she's there, ready for stardom, ready to push for a title in the meanwhile.
Okay, so very exciting with Mackenzie there, and we look forward to keeping an eye on how she does in the coming years. So we've been speaking so far about those who take part in the sport from the playing perspective, but obviously nowadays with the rise of social media and just the internet in general, there's a lot more coverage of the sport and a lot of more fan-made videos and documentaries. And a sports blogging platform that does this really well, we think, is Copper90, and they cover documentaries as well as going to different grounds and doing behind-the-scenes stuff. So guys, why do you think that Copper90 is one of the biggest sort of channels on YouTube that does this?
Because it just does things differently. I mean, you watch it and you think it just sort of reports on sport in such a different perspective to other channels, to other blogs, and it's just, I think it's very entertaining for people as well who just don't want to sit there and read articles, or who just, who want to get a different perspective of, say, football players' lives, for example. I mean, recently they did a piece with Hector Bellerin and talk about his life, and he's a bit of a character, so I think it's great to see that they've got that inside track on players' lives as well. People enjoy watching that kind of thing, and like it's a global thing as well. They don't just stay within England, they like to go elsewhere, talk about the political side of football as well, which is always good, interesting, because doesn't tend to get reported on a lot. So yeah, they just do things differently to other blogs, and that's, I think, very unique and what draws viewers in.
Yeah, so you mentioned the sort of different sort of videos that they make and tactical things they do as well to sort of analyse why managers are succeeding or maybe failing in a club that they're managing. I think mainly the main thing is that people kind of appreciate that kind of stuff. It's not the sort of stuff you see all the time. And so Jamil, what do you think are the key things that set out a great sports blog, something like Copper90, from one that is maybe just lagging behind a bit?
Well, like you say, Copper90 in particular, they delve into things deeper than most of the blogs. So, like you say, they look at the tactics. They'll also take fan view into account. So I'd say what makes a good football blog: accuracy, impartiality. Because some of the blogs are a bit too biased towards one team. Obviously, I know if it's a blog for a certain team, you have to show a bit of bias, but also you need to show a bit of impartiality as well. Another key thing I think that sets out a great sports blog would have to be their content. Like we say, if they post regular good content that not other blogs are posting, so not the generic stories or press conferences or those sort of things. If they can find a niche story, I think that's what sets a good one out from a not so good one.
Yeah, and I'd probably add something there as well, like something that has been mentioned. It's like the sort of graphics they use as well, and the sort of stuff within the video. I think that kind of shows they've gone sort of to the extra mile and put a bit of extra effort into to make the videos look good. So yeah, so that's one blog we think is really good, and obviously there's a lot out there, and it's really exciting times for platforms like this with fan-made content. So we're going to move on now to a review of the back pages from this morning. Obviously most of them are covering, with the back pages, most of them covering the Liverpool-Manchester City game yesterday. And we'll start off quickly with the Guardian, and they've gone with the headline "Sky High Mahrez" after Riyad Mahrez missed that late penalty. And if we had a look in the Daily Mail, they've they've said "Forgive me, Jesus," and there's a sort of contrast in headlines there. And what do you think the main sort of difference is between those two, with Express and the Guardian there?
Well, I think you look at the Express headline, "Forgive me, Jesus," can't play on words of Jesus, of course. it's just more light-hearted. It takes a more light-hearted turn, not as serious as, say, The Guardian. Both still very catchy headlines, but yeah, I think it just sort of tends to sort of poke fun more at the fact that Mahrez missed than, as The Guardian goes straight to the Guardiola issue of it, where he's taking the blame straight away. So there is that sort of seriousness and not as seriousness difference between the two. But I mean, it was an awful penalty, so it doesn't surprise me that they are poking fun at it.
Yeah, it was very poor. So you mentioned like the difference in headlines there and how they sort of put their words across. Do you think it's important? Obviously, they're appealing to different kind of readers. How important do you think it is that you have these different newspapers?
I think it's very important. If not all newspapers were the exact same, then you wouldn't really get a different aspect of story. Tabloids have their place. Obviously, broadsheets have their place as well. With it, it's not a very good example of a game to use, really, because it was such a poor, well, not a poor game, but not a very eventful game, that there's only one real talking point, and that's the penalty. That's what the Daily Mail have gone for as well. Their headlines: Pep says sorry. So it's all focused really on Guardiola basically trying to take Mahrez out of the spotlight, and trying to shift the blame. But like I say, I think it's very important that we have these different aspects of different newspapers, because if they were all the same, we wouldn't have any different insights into the game. So I think it's important that we have a different viewpoints.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just looking at the Guardian here, and they've also, as well as the main headline with the game yesterday, they've also got two other headlines. So there was Mo Farah's run in Chicago, where he won with a European team, and Lewis Hamilton winning the Grand Prix in Japan. Do you think that a paper like the Guardian, obviously it's one sports newspaper of the year, do you think that's one of the reasons why it does so well? It kind of covers a wide variety and kind of lets you know on the back page what's going to be inside, so you are more inclined to go in.
Yeah, it's good to see a variety of sports being covered on the back page. I mean, I think a lot of newspapers do it. I mean, again, we've got the Mo Farah headline here on the Express as well. Chicago, Mo kind of town. Again, there is a Jose Mourinho headline. So Jose vowed to put meat on bones in terms of making. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to do at Manchester United, but again, it's very much football based. So it is good to see that there's a variety of sports covered in an award-winning newspaper. But I don't think that maybe that isn't the biggest thing about the Guardian that makes it so, makes it what it is, makes it so good.
Yeah, I just mentioned there about Lewis Hamilton's performance yesterday. You're looking like he's going to win another Formula One title. What are your thoughts on him, really? So it's been an impressive year, impressive last few weeks where he's pulled away from Sebastian Vettel, really. Yeah,
it's been an impressive few weeks from Hamilton. He could win it in Texas on Sunday, next Sunday. I think he's away. He's in a league of his own, really, in Formula One. So it's no surprise that he's still shattering records and winning races every single time. And I think we'll struggle to find another driver like Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, so well done to Lewis. He's doing Britain proud at the moment, looking like he's going to win another title. For the moment, we'll stick with. So we've just spoken there about people who write about sport, but you've also got people who talk about it, and nowadays you have people appearing on radios, and they're almost becoming celebrities in how much coverage they get. And I think one of those people is Robbie Savage, for example. He appears on BBC 606, and he's I think it's fair to say he's a bit of a Marmite character. He's very opinionated. Either of you, would you class him as a lazy pundit, or do you think he's someone who's just not afraid to air his opinions?
I think he's very much in that mould of someone who isn't afraid to air his opinions. It can be argued that he is lazy. Yeah, of course. I wouldn't say he's the best pundit out there, but for me, he's someone who just gives his opinion whether you like it or not. I do like Robbie. I can't deny it, and I think his arguments with Chris Sutton are very enjoyable, not the least controversial. So yeah, he's just someone who just gives his opinion. He does his research into his clubs. He can sometimes cross that fine line between fan and professional. I think he sometimes he might cross into that area of unprofessional, and you think, right, he's got to sort of just calm down a bit, maybe just think about what he's saying more. But in terms of his opinion, in terms of what he does talk about, I think he is knowledgeable. I mean, he is ex-professional footballer. He's knowledgeable. He just gives his opinion, says it how it is, and I think that is key in today's landscape of punditry.
Yeah, as you mentioned there about his opinion, so do you think he is correct more often than not with the views that he gives?
I'd say he's often correct. Yeah, sometimes he takes things too far. Like Dan says, sometimes he's not impartial enough for me. He's a big supporter of Mark Hughes. Obviously, played for him in his playing days, and he's not afraid to show that. But like I say, he needs to sometimes not show that so much and maybe look at another viewpoint, because sometimes it comes across as a bit of bias. But Do I think he's correct more often than not? Yeah, I'd say he often gives a really good viewpoint. I think he's a good pundit. He often say things that not a lot of pundits want to say. Recently regarding Mourinho, he's been giving good viewpoints on that. And just generally, I think, the views he gives are generally very good, but sometimes that impartiality needs to be looked at a bit more.
So you both agree there pretty much that you mostly agree with what he says. So, but he still gets a lot of stick online and people calling in. Do you think it's more his personality that sometimes will rub people up the wrong way? Rather than his views?
Definitely. I think you look at even his playing days used to get stick. Someone who can't play football, someone who can't tackle, that kind of thing. So, and maybe some of that might just stem from that. Again, he has got, like you said, a very Marmite personality. Some people that get rubbed the wrong way by him. Other people just enjoy what he says. So I think it's just a case of a lot of pundits. I mean, he gets a lot of stick, but then so do many others. So it's a case of you respect what he says, or you don't. It's not. I don't think his popularity is much different personally from a lot of other pundits you see these days on BBC or Sky Sports, for example.
Yeah. So staying with pundits for now. Do you have a favourite one really? Either on radio, TV, or whichever platform.
I'd have to go for the Gary Neville. I think, again, he's an example of a player who does use impartiality. Obviously an ex-Man United player, class of '92, but he's not afraid to give his opinion, even if it's not the one that maybe everyone wants to hear. Just last week on Friday, he gave his full support to Jose Mourinho. When everyone else seems to be slating him and saying he needs to go, he's the one who stood up and said that he needs to stay, he needs to be backed, United need to not be leaking things to the press. So I'd have to say, Gary Neville for his impartiality and obviously his analysis as well on Monday Night Football and those sort of shows is unmatched really by any other pundit.
So you've gone for Gary, and obviously he's a former Manchester United player and you support Liverpool, so you would think initially that you would probably not like him, but do you think that shows just how good of a pundit it is, where someone you'd expect that you wouldn't like, that you actually think is really good?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. He's an ex-Man United player. When he was a player, obviously I didn't like him at all. But then he's come into the pundit world, and I think he's at levels above anyone else in the punditry game. And I just have to echo everything you just say. He's a Man United legend, and I think he's a great guy now, and I wouldn't even think to dislike him purely because of his allegiances to United. No, he's a great pundit.
And yours, Dan, do you have a favourite?
Similar to Jamil, I do like Gary Neville. I also like Jamie Carragher as well. I'm someone who's not a massive fan of Liverpool. I don't want him to win the league at all, but I never liked Jamie Carragher as a player. But as a pundit, I think he has come on leaps and bounds. Sometimes I do question his stance on some things, and I do like the back and forth between him and Gary Neville. But like Gary Neville, he's really sort of become a great pundit. And his knowledge of the game is superb, and he just gives his opinion. He just says it how it is. He's not afraid to criticise Liverpool. He's not afraid to praise Manchester United despite his allegiances. And I think that's so important in today's, in the pundit world today. That lack of bias that he shows and his professionalism is great.
And what do you think really sets apart, similar to with the newspapers and how good they are? What do you think sets apart a great pundit from a not so good one, ones that do really well?
I think it comes down to that bias, because a lot of the pundits, I'd say 99% are former players themselves, so obviously they have their own allegiances to sides. It's all about basically how you manage those and how you give your analysis in relation to them. So, for example, Chris Sutton, I think he's an example of, unfortunately, a pundit who's not the best. He's a staunch supporter of Scottish football and Celtic, and he will not be told any other way. So I think you've got to basically be willing to take it on the chin, take opinions on the chin, even if you don't agree with them. And that's why, like I say, Gary Neville's one of the best ones about. But Jamie Carragher's a great shout as well. It's all about that managing your bias and just making sure that you give the best analysis you can to the audience.
So do you think it's that professional aspect as well, where people are able to separate their personal views from from being professional as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously those players have made over 200 appearances, say, for one club. It's so important just not to have that bias, not to air it too often. I mean, you can always be upset about your team. Like you see Paul Scholes, for example, is very upset with the way things are at Man United, as is Gary Neville, I imagine. But there's nothing wrong with airing those. However, you cannot do it on a constant basis and constantly praise your team and hate on their rivals. Like Graham Souness, for me, I don't like what he says about Manchester United, because sometimes I feel he's very harsh just because of his Liverpool allegiances. Personally, I think he says things that, especially about Paul Pogba, I think are very I think he's quite lazy, because he's so quick to criticise and very rarely ever touches on the positive. I think Manchester United could win the league by 100 points, and he'd still have something bad to say about them. So yeah, there's a fine line between being a fan and being a pundit. So as long as you stick, on that line, then it's great.
And how hard do you think it is for pundits and people in general who put their views on a popular platform nowadays with this, what I mentioned about social media and how people can just give an instant view? How hard do you think it is for pundits, obviously getting a lot of stick as well?
Yeah, it's a tough job. It's a tough job to go into because, like you say, you could say one wrong thing and then you're the talk of the social media. Your career could be in tatters. Souness is a great example of one of those pundits who is now getting a lot of people are clicking onto the fact that maybe he's a bit unfair to Pogba, and he singles him out a lot. So you have to be careful with what you say. Souness is probably the best example of that. But other pundits as well, they take stick online. Chris Sutton again, he often gets. It's becoming a sort of a running joke about his support for Scottish football. He thinks that Celtic would probably win the Premier League if they were in the league. He genuinely believes that. So those sort of viewpoints are the ones which I'm not sure if they do it on purpose. They may do because it does get them exposure. But I think you've got to be careful with what you say, and you need to be sensible because you are providing analysis to a lot of people if you're on the big programs.
Yeah, so we've mentioned about sort of the discussion and analysis that pundits do. Do you think it's disappointing? Obviously, it's good to hear when it's good discussion. Do you think it's disappointing to hear when certain sort of maybe radio stations or, for example, TV programs or whatever kind of make up kind of fake debates just to try to get people to call in rather than actual basing it off their actual real opinions?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy listening to Talk Sport. I do. I think it's a very enjoyable broadcast, but sometimes they just create debate for debate's sake. They like to create an argument just for the fun of it. Like when, say, callers will ring in and say praise their club, for example, they will automatically disagree even though they know that caller's right. So it's so disappointing to hear professionals like that just want to cause controversy just so they can get more listeners or get people talking about them, because that's not what people tune in for. They tune in for expert analysis. They tune in for that, for people talking about their favourite team in an expert way. They enjoy the expert's opinion. They don't want people just arguing amongst themselves just because it's good television or it's good radio or something like that.
But do you think that's the reality of sort of private broadcasters, like not in the BBC, which is a public one, like private ones which kind of need to make a profit there in the same way that sort of newspapers do clickbait? Do you think it's inevitable that stations like that are going to be controversial just to get the views and the listens and the reads into their channel?
Yeah, I'd say that. Like you're spot on there with the private broadcasters. So like you've got like BT and Sky Sports. They often do create these debates literally just to create a buzz. You understand why they do it, but you have to wonder sometimes, is that really good punditry? Is it needed? Overall, I'd have to say those sort of debates, I don't really enjoy watching them, whether the arguments seem sort of staged, but I'd rather personally just literally watch the analysis of the game, be told, given my expert opinion from ex-pros or whoever it may be, and take it from there. I don't like these clickbait debates or these pointless arguments. No, I'm not a big fan of those at all. I prefer my analysis just to be pure, really.
Yeah, I think we all agreed on that. So yeah, some good discussion there on punditry, and we'll stick with football for a bit. And as I mentioned earlier, we're based at the University of South Wales in Cardiff, and obviously Cardiff, big place, there's a lot of sport going on. We're going to give a quick guide on sort of what's coming up this week in Cardiff, from the bigger sports to maybe the not so popular local side. The main event this week, Thursday evening, is Wales versus Spain in an international friendly. Our tickets are still available. They're playing at the Millennium Stadium. They've sold about 40,000 tickets at the moment. Adult tickets are available for £20, seniors are £10, and juniors are £5. So we'll quickly briefly look ahead to that game. What you think? In Spain have brought a decent side over. Wales are looking quite good under Ryan Giggs in his early stages.
Yeah, I think for me, when I watched the Euros and after that brilliant tournament for Wales, I thought Wales were probably not going to come back for a while. I didn't think Wales would, do anything great for a few years now. But Ryan Giggs is really bringing through some young players. It's great. He's given them a chance. Ampadu, Brooks, Connor Roberts, Woodburn, and will eventually become, maybe one of the best players Liverpool's seen in a while. So there's so much talent, young talent there, and Spain will have one of the best squads in the world. There's no doubt about that. Spain is such a strong outfit, and they are obvious favourites going into this game. But those young players, to be given that chance to play some of the best players in the world in Wales, I think it's such a great experience for them, because it's only a friendly. It's a great experience for them. It will mature them as players more than most people, I think, will realise. So I think it's such a great opportunity for these young players to perform on the world stage.
Yeah, just to stay with Wales football there, and Gareth Bale this morning has been announced that he's among the nominees for this year's Men's Ballon d'Or award, alongside Sergio Aguero, Liverpool keeper Alisson, Karim Benzema and Edinson Cavani. Obviously Gareth Bale's a pivotal figure for Wales, but obviously off the pitch as well. How important do you think his influence is?
Oh, it's massive. He's our catalyst, he's our leader. Obviously, it's great he's been nominated for the Ballon d'Or. On a separate point, I don't know how he didn't win the Puskas Award last week also for that overhead kick against us in the final. It's one of the best goals I've ever seen, especially on such a big stage, which again just shows how good Gareth Bale actually is. He always turns up on a big stage, but I think this upcoming game against Spain is all about the youngsters, like Dan said. It's all about getting them out, blooding them, getting them used to. I know it's a friendly match, but it's still going to be a high intensity game against the former European and world champions. So I'm looking forward to the friendly and seeing all the youngsters and seeing how they do.
And obviously Luis Enrique has recently taken over the Spain job after Lopetegui left to go to Real Madrid just before the World Cup. So Enrique did pretty well at Barcelona, good style of football. What do you think he can bring to the Spanish team?
A bit of flair that I think they've been lacking for a while now. I mean, ever since that World Cup winning team, I think they've sort of gone downhill in terms of that attacking flair they made so famous. So I think he could definitely bring that back. The players they've got are superb, like Asensio coming through. Isco, I think, is one of the best creative midfielders in the world, and they've still got Davis. They've still got like players like Sergio Busquets in that squad as well. And they've got Rodrigo up front, who has come out of nowhere really to be one of the best strikers in Europe. So they've still got such great quality, and I think he can really help mould that together and create maybe a new Spain team that will be one of the best team in the world for years now, just like they were when they won the World Cup.
And we mentioned earlier the Wales' younger players, the new generation coming through. Just how exciting do you think they are, the likes of Woodburn, Brooks and Ampadu?
They're so exciting. They're all on the back of their Wales performances. They're now getting a chance in the first team as well. Ampadu at Chelsea. Obviously you've got Brooks, you've got young Ben Woodburn as well. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this new future that Wales have. Hopefully we can build on our Euro 2016 performance with the experienced players in the squad, blood the youngsters in, and then mount a push for Euro 2020 hopefully.
And you mentioned with the younger players there. Obviously it's a good squad. What your thoughts ahead of the game, just in terms of the result? How do you think it'll go?
I think it'll be a Spain victory. I think Wales, just that lack of experience will, I think, be the downfall really. But that's not to say that they won't play well. That's just a case of they just haven't had enough experience in those big games. So a defeat will be nothing. No, it won't look bad on Wales. It won't damage them at all. So maybe a Spain 2-0 victory or 3-0 victory, something like that. But definitely it will not look bad on Wales at all, the defeat, because they'll gain a lot in defeat.
And your thoughts, Jamil? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I'd have to. Spain is such a good side. You have to say they're the favourites going into it, but it's not about the result. It's about the performance. It's about getting the youngsters some minutes, seeing how they perform against such high quality opposition. If I had to give you a result, I'd have to say 2-1 Spain, and that's been probably generous to us. But we'll have to wait and see on the night.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. So obviously you mentioned Gareth Bale, obviously the best player in Wales' team, the key man. Do you think he can get any sort of advantage from, obviously he plays in the Spanish league and he'll know a fair few of the players, people like Sergio Ramos. Do you think that'll get him and Wales in general an extra sort of tactical advantage?
Maybe. I don't think it's the biggest advantage ever. I mean, you see a lot of players play their club mates at international level, and it doesn't tend to make that much of a difference. Maybe Bale can get the beating of Ramos, who in my opinion is arguably the best centre-back in the world, despite his controversial behaviour. But I think as long as he just goes out and performs his best, that's all you can ask for really. Because when he's at his best, when he's on form, he's one of the best players in the world. He's almost unstoppable.
Yeah, so we're massively looking forward to that game. Another game coming up on the weekend, slightly lower level, is a Welsh Football League game. We think you might be interested in attending this one. It's on Saturday, 13th of October. It's Taffswell against Pontypridd Town, and they play in the Welsh Football League Division 1. Pontypridd Town were promoted last season from Division 2, finishing in the top 3. Tickets for this game, adult tickets are £5 and juniors can enter for free. Speaking from personal experience, I've been to Rhywyddor, Taffswell's ground, to watch games before, and it's a really good ground, quite welcoming. And I think if anyone wants to go to that one, that'll be enjoyable. The Wellmen are currently 15th in the table, while Ponty are one place lower. They're currently propping up the table in bottom position, so quite a poor start for them, but a bit of a basement battle there. And also, if football isn't your thing, there's rugby on in Cardiff all the time, and one game on Saturday looks quite mouthwatering is Glamorgan Wanderers, who currently top the National League 1 East Central. They're at home to Rumney. The Wanderers play at the Memorial Stadium in Ely, and as I mentioned, they've made a good start. They're currently top of the table, winning the first 5 games of the season. There's also ice hockey, which Dan can tell you a bit about.
Yeah, the Cardiff Devils are at home to the Dundee Stars in ice hockey's Elite League. The face-off is at 7 p.m. and ticket prices are as follow: bronze adult £16, over 60s £12, and child £8. Silver tickets at £17 per adult. For over 60s is £13, and for child it's £9. Whereas gold tickets for adults is £19, for over 60s £15, and for children the price is at £11.
So that's a bit of ice hockey action there. Not the most popular sport, but one that I certainly enjoy. And obviously Cardiff Devils have had some pretty good success recently. Just how much of a sort of positive spin do you think that brings to just to Cardiff in general of when they're doing well in the Elite League?
Yeah, I think it's important. It obviously helps the city massively. Ice hockey is a sport that I think needs to be pushed in this city or in this country in general. It's a really good and entertaining sport. It's great for the kids to go to, as you see there. It's only £8 for them to go to watch that game, the Devils. And I think it's a really entertaining sport. It's a really fit. It's a fit sport. You know, you have to be active to play it. Is what I mean. So yeah, I'd say it needs to be pushed. It's a good sport, and I think it's underutilised in this country.
And obviously the majority of the players come over from Canada to play. Do you think the next step now in Cardiff Devils is sort of adventure is to try and get more Welsh players to come? Obviously you have a couple of British players there in Ben Bounds and Mark Richardson, Craig Moore, but do you think that is the next thing to get more Welsh and maybe on the whole British players to come in and play?
Oh, definitely, yeah. As Jamil said, you know, ice hockey isn't as big in this country as it is in places like Canada, so it's not a surprise that many of their players are Canadian. So it is, you know, they do need that academy. They do need to bring through young Welsh players, and not just Welsh, British players into the fold, because Cardiff Devils is such a good ice hockey team. So I think bringing through those young players will definitely push the sport in this country by a mile, and it'll eventually, you know, it could become one of the biggest sports in Wales if pushed correctly.
Yeah, so that's coming up on Saturday. That's an event that's coming up on the weekend. But something that happened over the weekend just gone, was in the UFC. Obviously, the big fight between Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib continued his unbeaten record and he made Conor submit towards the end, and obviously unsavoury scenes towards the end as he jumped over the cage. What were your guys' thoughts on the event? It was quite ugly scenes towards the end.
Well, it was an unbelievable night of fighting, really. Even the undercard was absolutely mad. It had it all. It had a one-punch knockout. It had a broken hand in the Tony Ferguson fight. Anthony Pettis having to retire with a broken hand, and obviously then you had the main event, which is what you expected, really. Everyone, you know, Khabib has that wrestling background, that pedigree. He used that to his advantage. Conor McGregor didn't really offer much because he was so afraid of getting taken down. He even got dropped by a right hand by Khabib, who's not even a boxer. So it just shows how dominant the guy is. On the subject of the scenes after the fight, there's no place for that in the fight game, especially UFC. It sets the sport back and makes it look really amateur and unprofessional. So I think those involved in, you know, jumping Conor McGregor and Khabib's corner's case, and Khabib himself obviously scrapping Conor McGregor's trainer outside the ring after the fight. It's not what we want to see. It's not really what you expected to see. That's certainly the case. But if we're looking at just the fight, it was a great fight. Enjoyed it. But I think we're going to be looking at big sanctions for all those involved in the events afterwards.
Yeah, so not the best scenes at the end of the UFC there, but I think we're all pretty much just out of time for this week's episode. It's time to wrap it up. Today we spoke about, for example, the Premier League title race, as well as providing the latest updates from the USW Sport Park. We also discussed why we think Robbie Savage gets so much stick and why he is actually maybe one of the better pundits, and also explained why we think Copper90 is one of the best sports bloggers around at the moment. Mackenzie Dearn was highlighted as someone to keep an eye on, and our What's On section towards the end provides you with various sporting events which could be worth attending over the next week. So looking ahead to next week now, I'll be joined by my fellow students Jordan Jones and Tom Young, and we'll be looking back on another week of sport, as well as debating the key issues in the world of sport as well, and we'll also look through the back pages, giving our ones to watch and letting you know what sport is happening in and around Cardiff. So we're just about out of time. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this week's podcast. My thanks go to Jamil and Dan for joining me.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, and we hope you can tune in for next week's episode of Sports and Recreation.